What's the scariest thing that you could ever run into on a camping trip? Wolves, a bear, maybe a Sasquatch with a machete? Well, what about a psycho hunter who's turned the entire forest into a death trap? And one wrong step could be your last. So imagine you're out hiking with a bunch of friends when one of them falls into a giant pit of spikes, and the next thing you know, you're lost in the woods with a crazy trapper trying to hunt you down. Like, what the hell would you do? Well, I'm here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the woodsman in Pitfall. Oh, and by the way, throw us a like on this video and check out our memberships for all kinds of exclusive how to beat action. And now, on to the episode. Our story today starts with a young boy and his mom on the run from his sketchball dad. After hiding in the woods, they turn around to see this cute little deer just minding its own business, but as they walk over to say hi, it suddenly falls straight through the ground into a giant pit of spikes, making one down with 9 more to go. Well, sure enough, the noise ends up leading his dad straight to them, and when his mom tries standing up to him, he smacks her down and puts the boy in a headlock. But while he's distracted, the kid gets away and whips out a knife, and furious, the man pushes him out of the way and slashes his mom's throat, sending them both tumbling into the pit and making 2 down with 8 more to go. Man, and I thought Bambi had it bad. But in case you didn't know, a pitfall trap is basically exactly what it sounds like. You dig a deep pit, fill it with a bunch of spikes, cover the top with some leaves, and let gravity do the rest. Now, as for little Timmy here, it looks like his only option is to start climbing, but things might not be as bad as they look. The pit looks like it's around 12 feet deep, which is pretty tall, but it's nothing that he can't climb out of. So if it was me, the first thing I would do is look for any roots, rocks, or any stuff to hold on to, or even a sharp stick to dig footholes in the wall. But obviously it would have been a lot better if they avoided this situation in the first place, and honestly, they totally could have lost his dad if they were smart. See, if you're ever being chased by someone in a car, one of the best moves is just to run in the opposite direction, forcing them to turn around and giving you time to get away. So first I would dip into the woods to break his line of sight, and then turn back and start running back all the way we came from, and hopefully by the time he realized, I'd already be long gone. Also, maybe don't just drop what you're doing and go walking up to some random deer in the middle of a chase. Like, what was that? Is really now the time for a Disney princess moment? I mean, first of all, wild animals are dangerous, and second, what if it makes noise? Which is exactly what ended up happening, so next time just get the hell out of there while you still have the chance. But even once he had them cornered, they still weren't out of options, so at that point I would have taken the kid's knife and told him to run for it. That's going to force the dad to either go after the boy or face me 1v1, but either way, it splits up his attention and gives the kid more time to escape. And then I'd open the fight with a front kick straight to the chest, which should give me a chance to either run away or go for a critical hit. And if he charged me, I would just step to the side, stick my leg out, and use his own momentum to send him flying into the pit. Sounds easy. Years later, we catch up with this brother and sister Scott and Ashley on their way to a camping trip somewhere deep in the mountains. You see, they've been growing apart ever since their parents got smoked in a freak accident, so they're taking this trip as a way to make up for it, but that was their biggest mistake. Because little do they know, they're about to be traumatized for a whole nother reason. They pull up at the spot along with their significant others, Gwen and Charlie, plus their best friend Lars, who's just there for moral support. And after cracking a few jokes, they grab their bags and hit the trail, never suspecting that they're about to walk straight into a death trap. Meanwhile, in another part of the woods, we see these 2 girls, Monica and Catherine, taking cover behind a tree. It seems like someone's after them, and as they get up to run, their friend suddenly takes an arrow straight through the neck. As a man in raggedy clothes walks over and slices his fingers off with a single swing, then just curb stomps the dude until the screen cuts to black, making 3 down with 7 more to go. Back with the squad, they've been hiking for a while when out of nowhere the ground gives out right under Lars's feet, and he almost falls straight down into another huge pit full of spikes. The boys run over and pull him up before he can fall to his death, and Charlie even points out that it's a hunter's pit, even though there's no one supposed to be hunting in that part of the woods. But they write it off as an accident and decide to set up camp, not realizing that the trap was actually meant for them. Well, they're sitting around the fire when Charlie decides that they should go catch a fish. It's getting late, so Gwen says that they should bring a flashlight, but Scott says that they're good, and they head down to the river, leaving Lars and the girls back at the campsite. Alright, whoever invited the guy from Final Destination needs to get kicked out of the friend group immediately. But seriously, let's pump the brakes on this runaway log truck for just a second here, because if their goal is to get through the weekend without any fresh trauma, they're already off to a rough start. Now, a little camping trip with the squad might not seem that sketchy at first, but once you're out of the woods, anything can happen. And right off the bat, I could tell that they weren't the brightest crayons in the box when they made Lars leave his phone in the car. You see, he forgot to put it in the back seat when they first pulled up, but instead of just, unlocking it so he could have his damn phone, they treated it like a joke and said he wouldn't need it. But honestly, that's not funny, it's just dumb. But then we've got the boys that are about to head off on their first fishing trip, and once again, they're making the dumbest decisions imaginable. Like, first of all, you never want to go off the beaten path, because that's exactly how people get lost, and if there's an emergency, it's going to be that much harder for anyone to find you, right? Plus, they're leaving without a flashlight when it's about to get dark. Like, did they magically just forget that Lars almost getting shish kebabbed less than 20 minutes ago? Now, personally, I'd be treating what happened back there as a sign that we need to go the home. So if it was me, I'd keep everyone here at the campsite until tomorrow morning. Then first thing next day, I'd get back on the trail and head straight to the car, and then call the rangers and let them know there's someone leaving redneck saw traps all over the woods. But since these dummies have the survival skills of a potted plant, they're gonna be lucky just to make it back alive. The boys eventually catch some dinner and start heading back to camp, but by now it's already after dark, and that's when they hear this terrifying howl coming from somewhere in the woods. It's a pack of wolves, and within a matter of seconds, they're already circling them in, so not knowing what else to do, they start booking it out of there as fast as they can. The wolves keep chasing them no matter how far they run, only just as they're about to catch up, something brings them to a stop, and it sounds like they're attacking something. But as they listen closer, they realize that something is attacking them. And off in the distance, they hear this George of the Jungle-ass battle cry that could have only been made by another dude. Like, whatever's going on, they decide that they better dip before he finds them, so they start running again, with Charlie leading the way, until suddenly Scott ends up falling straight into another trap. Only this time, there's no one there to catch him. And by the time that Charlie notices he's gone, he's got absolutely no idea where he went. So with no signs of Scott, Charlie rushes back to the campsite where the others are just starting to worry. He explains what happened, saying Scott is still out there, and everyone starts freaking out, not knowing what to do, but Lars gets fed up and tells him to lock the in, twin, and they decide to stick together, grab some weapons, and then go back to look for their boy. Now, as for Scott, he wakes up at the bottom of the pit only to realize that a spike went straight through his leg. Still, he's lucky to be alive, but he won't be for much longer unless he finds a way out of there. And with no way to get the spike out of his leg, he takes his belt off and wraps it around to stop the bleeding. That's when he notices his bag hanging from the opposite wall, only it's just out of reach, so he takes off his shirt and tries knocking it down, and then takes his belt and tries using that, until finally he manages to pull it over and starts digging around for his phone. Now, while Scott's been working on his escape plan, the others grabbed some flashlights and started looking around, and just then they hear a phone ringing in Gwen's bag, so thinking it must be him, she digs around only to realize it's just an alarm, and to make things worse, it's Scott's phone, meaning wherever he is, he's got no way to call for help. So frustrated, they decide to check the map, but that's when they realize that it's in Scott's bag, and so are the keys to the truck. So now he's trapped at the bottom of the pit with nothing but a useless map and half a jug of water, and they're lost in the woods with no idea how to get home. And as if that's not bad enough, the killer is still out there just waiting for his chance to strike. Alright, wow. This whole trip just fell apart faster than a game night at Jigsaw's house. But as usual, they're still over here making the worst possible decisions. Like, let's start with the boys. In reality, wolves are usually scared off by groups of people, which is why they should have stuck to the campsite and not wandered off on their own. But if you ever did find yourself getting circled by a pack of wolves, running away is literally the worst thing you can do. Now, since they're in Washington, we know these have to be gray wolves, and they might look cute and cuddly when you see them from a distance, but just ask Liam Neeson and he'll tell you, these wild puppies are no joke. And the wild gray wolves get up to 100 pounds on average and can run faster than 30 miles an hour, so there's literally no chance you're outrunning them. And actually, running's exactly what they want you to do, because remember, they're pack hunters. So you might get away from one, but the others are already moving to cut you off. And on top of that, running activates their prey response, making you look like an easy target. So the better strategy would have been to just stop running and hold their ground. forest, and then I'd pick up the biggest branch I could find. That way I had a weapon and with some decent reach, and start backing away slowly until they took off. Or, worst comes to worst, I'd just find a tree since, wolves can't climb, and then just chill up there until they finally left me alone. But since these dummies decided to run straight through a forest pit full of spikes, I guess this camping trip just turned into a rescue mission. If they stay put and keep the fire going, there's a much better chance of Scott finding them than him finding them. And in the morning, I'd use Charlie's hunting skills to retrace his tracks back to the place where he first noticed Scott was missing. And from there, we split up in pairs and spread out to search the area, looking for boot prints, broken twigs, or anything to show where he might have gone. But if we don't find something in the first hour or two, it would actually be smarter to just get up and leave and go find some professional help, because it's better to let the Rangers know ASAP than to waste another day. The next morning, there's still no sign of their friend, and by now the group's spirit is running a little low. But Charlie comes back to the others saying he found some tracks not too far away, so with no other ideas, they decide to go check it out. Now, while they're busy with that, we see a flashback of when Hunter is checking his traps. Suddenly, the little boy from the beginning climbs out of the pit, and thinking that the dude is his father, he brutally takes him out with his own hunting knife, just takes off the guy's clothes, and wanders off into the forest, making 4 down with 4 more to go. Back in the present, we catch up with those 2 girls from before. They're still on the run from the woodsman, but they manage to find a walkie-talkie. Yeah, so they get on the radio and start calling for help, hoping that somebody might hear them. Well, to their surprise, someone actually responds, a hunter who says he's close by, and when they look over, they see him standing just a few yards down the trail. So, thinking that they're saved, Catherine gets up and makes a beeline straight for him, only to run into a trap, and as her friend runs over to help, an arrow comes screaming out of the woods and hits a tree just to her left. Another 2 arrows barely miss them, forcing Monica to run for cover. But as she tries to warn the hunter, the woodsman sneaks up right behind him and clobbers the guy with his bow, and then takes out a hatchet and chops his rifle in half with 1 swing. Knocking him back, he puts an arrow in the guy's chest and then hits him with a throwing axe straight to the dome, making 5 down with 5 more to go, while Monica circles back and tries to help her friend. Grabbing the hatchet out of his head, she rushes over and cuts the rope as the woodman suddenly vanishes, taking the radio as he disappears into the forest. But on the bright side, he's left the hunter's revolver, so the girls pick it up and decide to keep going. Alright, looks like Scotty and his friends aren't the only ones on this guy's hit list. But now that they're strapped, the girls actually have a much better chance of survival. First though, we gotta talk about this random hunter, cause things could have gone a lot differently if he wasn't moving like a damn NPC. It's not like he didn't know there was danger around, because the girls literally said, someone's trying to kill us. So if that's not obvious enough, I don't know what else to tell you guys. But as soon as he realized this was all happening close by, that probably would have been a good time to lock in. Now if he was being smart, the best thing to do would be to find some cover and get the blammer out. That way he's not just standing around like a sitting duck. And if he was already prepared once the guy showed up, taking him out should have been a piece of cake. Like if you're going up against a guy with a bow and arrow, the last place you want to be is out in the open. But even a little bit of cover can make a big difference, so instead I would have immediately hit the deck and got behind a tree. If you're going up against a guy with a bow and arrow, the last place you'd want to be is out in the open, but even a little bit of cover can make a big difference. So instead I would have immediately hit the deck and got behind a tree, and from there all I'd have to do is watch where the arrows were coming from, wait until he stuck his head out, and blam! Everyone goes home happy. But since this guy let Minecraft Myers catch him lacking, he never even stood a chance. Now as for the girls, their situation's looking a lot better, cause now not only are they packing the old Rudy Tooty point and shooty, but this dude's body might have more useful supplies on him. Like first of all, he had his own radio, so I'd definitely be grabbing that, but I wouldn't use it right away since remember Evil Rambo has the other one, so I would just keep it with me in case we need it later. He also probably has some extra ammo, a phone, a hunting knife, his car keys, and maybe even a map or GPS, which is all S-tier loot when you've got nothing else to work with. Besides that, another good thing is that he had to come from somewhere, so they could just always try following his trail back to civilization. But they need to be careful because the killer's probably tracking them too, so this would be a good time to break out the J-hook. Basically, you start walking in a straight path, but after making sure that they can't see you, you loop around and double back on your own trail. And if you do it right, you should be able to come up behind whoever's following you. And then the girls could just blast him and walk home worry-free. Bam! Back with Scott, he ends up passing out for a while only to wake up and see the hunter standing at the edge of the pit. But he still has no idea the guy's been running around catching bodies. So at first he tries asking for help, thinking this was all just some kind of accident, but the dude just stands there aura farming, not saying a word, and after signaling him to keep quiet, he wanders off, leaving him trapped right where he is. Another day passes without making any progress until later that night the others actually hear Scott calling for help, or at least that's what they think. But when they go looking, his voice leads them over to this random stump, and reaching inside, they realize that it's just a walkie-talkie. Stumped, Gwen picks it up and calls back saying they're a few miles from the river, but just then the call cuts out, and now the killer knows exactly where they are. By now, it's pretty clear there's something fishy going on, and as crazy as it sounds, Gwen is convinced that somebody must have kidnapped her man. But now that they know he's still alive, they're not giving up until they find him. So their plan is to camp for the night, find some signal in the morning, and then call for help and hopefully rescue their friend. But that's only if the killer doesn't find them first. After setting up the camp, the others decide to get some sleep while Charlie stays up keeping watch. But as he's starting to nod off, he spots the hunter watching from the tree line, only for him to disappear a second later. Eventually, he ends up passing out, and the minute he's asleep, the killer walks into camp with his hunting knife. But instead of attacking, he leaves Charlie alone and makes his way over to the tent. Now inside, Ash wakes up to the sound of someone opening the door, so she wakes up Gwen, and they both start asking if it's Charlie, which makes whoever is out there come to a stop. After waiting a minute, she grabs the door and rips it open, only to find a whole bunch of nothing on the other side, which is sketchy, but as far as they know, Charlie should still be keeping watch, so in the end, they just decide to ignore it and go back to sleep. Okay, I'm sorry, but what? You're telling me a total stranger just tried to open their tent in the middle of the night and they're about to go back to sleep? I honestly don't even know what to say to that. I mean, it's an interesting strategy. Like, maybe the guy will think they're just too dumb to kill and leave them alone, but anyone who actually wants to live should be having the exact opposite reaction. After finding the walkie-talkie stashed in the tree stump, it should have been pretty obvious that they weren't alone out there, so leaving someone on watch was actually really smart. Their only mistake was expecting the guy to be able to stay up all night. I mean, they're already exhausted from all this hiking and searching for their friend, so you really can't blame the guy for passing out. But instead, I would have split the team into two groups and then divided the night into two shifts. That way, two of us are on guard duty while the others can get some rest, and we can rotate on and off every few hours. That's going to keep everybody fresh, and with two people on the lookout instead of one, they'll be able to keep each other awake, making it that much harder for anyone to sneak up on them. But obviously, they fumbled this time around. And it's never too late to start getting their act together, though. And with their secret admirer showing up to pay them a visit, I'd say now's a good time. So if it was me, the first thing I'd do is get up and confirm that Charlie is still even awake. And once I found out that he's not, that's when I'd know we have a serious problem. Now at that point, I'm waking everybody up and checking the whole campsite just to make sure the intruder isn't still around. Then we're circling around the fire, grabbing some weapons and flashlights, and holding down the fort until the next morning. And if we manage to survive the night, it's time to get the hell out of there before it gets any worse. In the morning, Gwen wakes up to find the door sitting wide open and reaches for her bag. She realizes that she's missing her phone. The others are still passed out, completely clueless that anything has happened, but with no phones, no map, and no clue where they are, their rescue plan is falling apart pretty fast. And pissed off, she grabs her stuff and decides to keep going, saying that she doesn't care if they come or not. And after taking some time to cool off, she realizes the vibes are kind of awkward and tries soothing things over with Ashley, but at this point everyone's pretty much on edge, and while they are busy arguing, they finally spot the hunter chilling way up in a tree. Now they're still not 100% sure that he's dangerous yet, so Charlie decides to try the friendly approach, thinking maybe it's just a big misunderstanding, but as usual, the guy is not answering back, and the moment they take their eyes off of him, he suddenly vanishes into thin air. It's pretty sketchy to say the least, and thinking it over, Lars points out that he's the only person they've seen this entire trip, meaning that must be the guy who stole all their stuff. So they decide to get a move on, hoping if they skedaddle that he'll leave them alone. Night falls again with no sign of Scott or a way out, so Charlie decides to go get some more firewood. And even though Gwen volunteers to go with him, he tells her it's cool and says that he'll be right back. Well, he's only been gone for a few seconds when they hear something moving around in the brush, and nervous, Lars gets up to go check it out, but whatever's out there, it's definitely not Charlie, and the woods are so dark that he can't really see a thing. Meanwhile, back in the pit, Scott wakes up to find his friend's camera sitting right by his feet. It looks like the woodsman must have left it there, so he does what anyone else would do and decides to look at the footage. But nothing prepares him for what he's about to see. The tape starts with some footage of a campsite, his friend's campsite, and it shows Charlie coming back with the firewood only to realize the others are nowhere in sight. So confused, he looks around until he hears grunting coming from one of the tents, and pulling it open, he finds the others are all tied up inside. But before they can warn him, the killer sneaks up from behind and knocks him out cold. And the next thing he knows, he wakes up in the other tent with his feet tied together and his hands tied behind his back. And with the others watching, the woodsman grabs a torch and sets the whole thing on fire, with Charlie still trapped inside. Well, Charlie, I'd roast you for being dumb, but it looks like this guy's about to do that anyway. But just like with everything else so far, this was easily avoidable if they were using their brains. You see, up until now, they hadn't actually got a good look at this guy, but now that they did, they should have already been able to tell a few things. 1, he's watching them. 2, he knows his way around the woods. And 3, he's definitely not friendly. So personally, that would have, changed my whole approach. He could have easily attacked at any point during the day, but since he didn't, that's a sign he was waiting for night to make his move. And since it was already getting late when they first spotted the guy, my goal would have been to put as much distance between us as humanly possible. But I wouldn't just take off in some random direction. I'd either head back towards a beaten path if I could, or if we're genuinely lost, I'd head for some higher ground. That way we can at least look around. But when the time came to set up camp, they should have learned their lesson from last night and tried to get ready in case he came back. So now that they know he's got a bow and arrow, I'd look for a spot with some natural cover like boulders, fallen trees, or rocky outcrops. And if we could, I'd try to find a spot where he could only come at us from a few directions. Next, there's 2 things I'd want to take care of before it gets dark, so I'd send one team to grab as much firewood as possible while another team sets up noise traps all around the camp, like dry sticks, crunchy leaves, cans tied to strings, stuff like that. Then we're keeping 2 people on watch like I mentioned before, with their flashlights and weapons ready in case he tries anything, and they never would have ended up in this situation. Anyway, Charlie only has about a minute before the tent goes up in flames and he's toast. But since Woodman left him a knife, there's 2 ways I could see him getting out of this one. I'd leave the knife how it is, but scoot up to it backwards so the blade's facing away from him, and then loop the rope over with the handle between his wrists and back, and start sawing through it until it gets loose. Or 2, I'd grab the handle, rotate it around so the blade is pointing up and facing towards his back, and then start sawing back and forth until he's able to get out. So our boy wiggles over to the knife and starts trying to cut the rope, but it's taken way too long, and just when it seems like things couldn't get any worse, Ashley breaks the news that she is pregnant now. Thanks for that piece of information. Well, that gets Charlie to lock in, and after finally getting through the rope, he cuts his way through the tent and collapses to the ground. But the damage is already done, and the killer just walks away as he finally dies from his injuries, making 6 down with 4 more to go. Disgusted, Scott drops the camera and starts trying to break the spike with his keys, but it's still no use, and looking up, he sees the hunter just standing there watching him. So he starts shouting at the guy to come down and face him 1v1, but the dude just walks off without saying a word. Back at the campsite, Lars crawls over to the knife and uses it to set them all free, and heartbroken, Ashley starts breaking down as Gwen runs over to check on her, but with nothing they can do to save Charlie, they decide that they better just get out of there before the hunter comes back. Grabbing whatever weapons they can find, the 3 of them start booking it through the forest, and out of nowhere they run straight into those 2 girls from the other trip. It turns out this dude's been hunting all of them at the same damn time, and right as they figure it out, an arrow comes flying past and hits the tree right next to them. So now all 5 of them take off running with the woodsman hot on their trail. He circles around and fires a barrage of arrows, barely missing as they dip between the trees until eventually they get to a spot where it seems like they lost him. But as soon as they stop to catch their breath, a hatchet flies out of the darkness and hits Catherine straight in the neck, hitting her so hard that it pins her against a tree. And the worst part is, the girl is still alive. But with nothing they can do to save her, they decide that their only choice is to run. And the minute they're gone, he takes the hatchet out of her neck, causing her head to just fall off, and making 7 down with 3 more to go. Damn, I guess Catherine should have had her head on a swivel, and then maybe it would have stayed attached to her body. But unless they want this dude to keep picking them off one by one, they need to start moving with some actual strategies here. Catherine just demonstrated rule number 1, never stop in the open. You see, if this dude's using ranged weapons, stationary targets with a clear line of sight are exactly what he wants. So for me, I wouldn't stop unless I was behind some solid cover like a rock or a tree. Also, we don't want to just blindly sprint away since there's always a chance of running into another trap. So instead, they should honestly slow down a little bit, stay low and move from cover to cover. And instead of bunching up in a big group, I would just spread out since that divides up his attention, and then worst case scenario, I just need to be faster than the slowest person to get away. Besides that, another thing they could do is start picking up arrows or hatchets whenever he misses, so eventually he might run out of ammo, and if they can get him down to only hand-to-hand weapons while we still have the revolver, it's pretty much game over. And then all they gotta do is just wait for a clear shot and blast him as soon as he gets close, and it's GG's, fam. The others are still hauling ass blast down the trail when Ashley accidentally hits a tripwire, and before she can even react, a spiked log suddenly swings out and pins her to a tree. Luckily, it's not a kill shot, but she's trapped with no way to get out, and it's not long before they see the killer heading their way. Lars grabs the hatchet and starts trying to chop the log while Monica ups the blammer and gets ready to open fire. She misses the first shot though, but the second one hits him in the shoulder. But this dude just tanks the hit and activates another trap. And all of a sudden a giant spiked ball swings down and hits her straight in the face, making 8 down with 2 more to go. Now the others still haven't gotten Ashley out, and with Monica down, Lars steps in to try and hold him off. But the dude just backhands him to the ground, so Gwen comes running over and stabs him in the arm. But he pulls it out himself and slashes her across the face. Back in the pit, Scott's just about ready to give up, but as he slumps back up against the wall, he ends up knocking down this shiny black rock, and it's obsidian. While they were fishing, he learned from Charlie that stuff is insanely sharp, so he uses it to cut a root and get some water, another trick he learned from Charlie. And then he starts using it to cut through the spike, but just when it seems like his luck is starting to turn around, he hears a thunderstorm heading his way, meaning now he's got to get out of there before he drowns. Later, Gwen goes to wake up Lars, and as soon as he comes to his senses, he starts looking for the hunter to try and give him the hands. But by now the dude is already long gone, and as Gwen points out, they don't even really know where he went, which is when they hear Ashley calling for help on the walkie-talkie. Gwen's just about to call back when Lars stops her, saying that's what the killer wants them to do. So instead they decide to keep quiet, listening for any clues that might lead them to his hideout, and sure enough they realize he must be near the waterfall. So they grab the blammer and start heading in that direction. Scott is still trying to escape when he hears a commotion coming from up above, and when he looks up he realizes it's his sister dangling face first over the pit. Apparently the killer thinks she's his mom, so this is his twisted version of keeping her safe. And as for Scott, that makes him the daddy, so the dude's just gonna leave him there to die. Talk about a weird family reunion, and with everyone else dead or about to be, it looks like it's up to Gwen and Lars to come in clutch. But if they use a good strategy, they should still have a chance to save their friends. This is when we need to use everything we know about this guy to our advantage, so they need to take it slow, stay out of sight, and keep an eye out for traps. And once they get to camp, I'd stop for a minute to check things out just before blindly rushing in. Now instead of trying to face him on his own turf, this might be a good time to flip the script and set a trap for him. And the walkie-talkie might be the way to do that. You see, Lars was smart by telling Gwen not to respond, since he knew that the killer was listening, but there's actually a way that they can use that against him. Once they get close to the camp, I'd give Lars the radio and the revolver and have him start calling, which should hopefully lead the hunter away from the others. And then while he's distracted, Gwen can sneak in and free Scott and Ashley. And if he's able to get a clear shot, Lars can just blast him and call it a day. Well, there's just one problem with the hunter's plan. The log is breaking, meaning it's only a matter of time before Ashley face plants straight into the pit. That's when Gwen and Lars show up, but instead of thinking it through, she immediately rushes over and try to help. And suddenly she runs straight into a rope that lifts her into the air and catches her arm in a homemade bear trap. Lars ducks behind a tree as the killer walks out and starts stepping on the chain, pressing down harder and harder until he's about to rip her arm off. But just then he scrapes his knife across the tree to get his attention, and by the time that the guy walks over, he's already in a different spot. That's when Lars jumps down and attacks him with his knife, and while he's got the killer distracted, Gwen takes out her knife and manages to cut the rope. Injured, he pushes Lars away and disappears into the trees, only to pop back down and catch him by surprise. So he spins around and puts a knife straight through the guy's arm, but the dude just yanks it out and puts the blade through Lars's cheek. That's when Gwen finally gets the blammer and hits the woodsman in the shoulder, giving Lars a chance to pull the knife out of his own face. But by then, the guy's already back at it and he smacks him so hard he goes flying back into a tree. Meanwhile, Scott finally manages to get free just as the whole pit fills in with water, and breaking the same stick that just had him trapped, he uses it to start climbing straight up the damn wall. Lars sees what's happening and starts struggling to get to his feet, but before he can get up, the hunter puts a knife through his hand and pins him to a log. That's when Gwen finally pulls her arm out of a bear trap while Scott saves his sister just in time. And picking it up, she puts it down behind the killer just as Lars whips out a can of bear spray, spraying it right in his eyes and causing him to stumble back into the trap. Lars pulls the knife out of his own hand and reaches for the chain, and thinking they have him beat, Gwen turns around and sees the others are safe. But all of a sudden, the killer pops up from behind and impales her with his knife, making 9 down with 1 more to go. Oh, hell no. You're telling me she survived all that just to get smoked right here at the finish line? That just feels unfair, but if we're being honest with ourselves, she totally could have avoided this if she kept her head in the game. So I genuinely hate to say it, but Gwen, you completely f***ed up here. Like, if there's one thing that should have been obvious by now, it's that this dude has traps literally everywhere you go. Now, a girl just got her head smashed by a giant spiked ball less than 20 minutes ago, so I'm sorry, but why the hell are we running full speed straight into his freaking camp? They're honestly lucky Lars put up the performance of a lifetime, otherwise they would have all been toast. And the worst part is, the guy was literally on 1 HP. But she let her guard down before the fight was over, and now it looks like Scotty's gonna be going home single. So sorry, Gwen, but you kind of up. Well, for Scotty, that's the last straw, and he starts calling the dude over to come catch these hands. He opens the fight by throwing the hatchet straight at him, but Scott dodges it and keeps standing his ground. And while he's distracted, Lars throws a log over to Ashley, who clobbers the dude across the back, knocking him straight into Scotty's wooden spike. Now this time, all the damage finally catches up with him, and as Scott lets him go, he stumbles right into his own pit and gets impaled on a spike, making 10 down with no more to go. Now there's still a part of Ashley that kind of feels bad for the dude, but when she looks over at Scotty, he's clearly got no regrets. And as for my guy Lars, it seems like he's just grateful to be alive. Well, the squad waits until sunrise before getting back on the trail, with Scotty saying goodbye to Gwen and promising to come back as soon as he can. They even pull my boy Lars in for a big group hug, since he turned out to be the goat of the whole situation, but honestly, he's in pretty rough shape. So they decide that they better get my guy to a hospital, and the three of them set off back towards home, planning to never go camping again. So that's the end of the story, right? The killer is defeated and they all lived happily ever after. Well, maybe not, because sometime later this random kid happens to stumble across the pit. Only when he looks down, the hunter's body isn't there, and suddenly someone pulls him back as the screen cuts to black. So in the end, that makes 9 victims down, with Scott, Ashley, and Lars as our only survivors, and as for the hunter, well, I guess we'll never know. But if there's a lesson we can all learn from what happened here, it's definitely this. If you're ever out camping and you find a giant pit of spikes, just do yourself a favor and get the back in the car. Pitfall. Interesting film. I actually caught this one on video. It didn't come to my cinemas, but I'm glad I watched it because, whew, boy, the people in this movie needed to tighten up. And if you guys would have done anything differently in today's episode, you need to let me know what that is down in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe. Check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm Ben. We'll see you in the next video and have a damn good day.